Who is Sawyer Gipson-Long? Let's find out. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, September 18th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, Shohei Ohtani has been shut down for the rest of the season. We've got some final waiver wire moves, starter sit decisions, and much more. You know the deal. Please help us out by liking this video and subscribing on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We really do appreciate it. And as I continue to mention, we're going to have off-season content. So if you want to hang out and continue to hear about baseball and fantasy baseball, what's happening in the playoffs and the off-season, we're still going to be here doing shows, I think, twice per week once we get to the off-season. So don't go anywhere. Stick around and hang out with the guys. Scott, how was the weekend? I know you were out at Marlins Park on Saturday.
I was out at Marlins Park on Saturday. Took the family, the rare Saturday afternoon game, and it just so happened the Braves were in town, so that worked out nicely. Yeah, they lost. I mean, anybody who's Marlins had a huge weekend. They swept the Braves. Jazz Chisholm hit a grand slam actually in back-to-back games. So move over Royce Lewis. There's a new grand slam king in town. I believe I saw on Saturday specifically, Jazz Chisholm became the first player ever to hit a grand slam and steal 3 bases in a game. So I know it was an 18-point game in standard CBS scoring. So big game for him, big weekend for the Marlins. It's always fun to see. I mean, I don't like it so much at my own team's expense, but it's always fun to see that borderline playoff team just seem to find another gear as they push for a playoff spot. Like it seems like it shouldn't happen as often as it does, because I feel like baseball is one of those is an oddity among sports where the harder you try, the worse you do, because it just you can't press with it. You kind of have to let it come to you. And but it seems to be happening for the Marlins. They're very hot right now, and maybe it propels them into the playoffs. We'll see. But yeah, otherwise, it was loud there, man. That was the biggest crowd for a Marlins game I've been to, which I'm sure has something to do with them still being competitive in mid-September. And yeah, it was an interesting time. I think the boys had fun. They mostly were just concerned with what they were going to eat next, which I remember. I remembered that experience from their perspective, so I get it. But they seem to, for the first time, take at least a mild interest in what was happening on the field. So that's good.
Nice. Shout out to the Marlins, man, playing competitive games here in September. This National League wildcard race is awesome right now. I mean, maybe not if you're a fan of the team. It's kind of like hectic and I guess stressful at this time of year. But man, there's 4 teams within 1 game of each other in the standings that are all vying for 2 wildcard spots right now. So it's a close race. And then the Giants are 2 games behind them too. So between the D-backs, the Cubs, the Marlins, the Reds, the Giants, it's going to be a pretty crazy finish to the season here. I went to the Mets and Reds game on Friday. No Ellie De La Cruz in the lineup, Scott. Just like I knew it was going to happen. They were going up against a lefty, David Peterson. So I was like, whatever. Still a fun game anyway. Shout out to everyone who's made it to their fantasy baseball championship. Maybe you already won your fantasy baseball championship. Some people are already tweeting in. I see some comments on YouTube, people winning championships. So congratulations to you. Congratulations to you specifically, Scott. You took me down. You're in the championship in the podcast points league, where you will be going up against Kyle B. And then you're also in the championship.
Whose team name is Church of Scott White, right? So you get Scott White warring against his own church.
That's right.
And we'll see if the student has surpassed the master in the podcast league. And what were you about to say, Frank?
And it's a clean sweep for Scotty, because you're in the For the People League finals as well.
That's right.
Chris G. So we'll see. We'll see if you can take them both down, man.
That would be cool. I don't think it's been done in podcast league history before, winning both of them. The For the People League hasn't been around as long as the original recipe. It would suck to lose both of them. I hope that doesn't happen. It did look like I was trending toward being in a third head-to-head points championship game. I entered the day down by like 20 points. I had 5 starters going to his 1. I checked on it mid-game. One of my starters, Charlie Morton, had a bad start against those raging Marlins, but the other 4, 2 of the starts were awesome. 2 of them were pretty good. And then that bad start for Morton, I seemed to have a pretty comfortable lead. I was like, okay, this is in the bag. Out of nowhere, Gavin Stone gets a 3 1/3 inning save for the Marlins, worth 22 points in this scoring format.
Oof.
I lose by 2.
Oh,
I lose by 2 because the random Gavin Stone save. So the podcast leagues are the only 2 head-to-head leagues that I am competing for the championship in. There are a couple roto leagues where I have a shot, but I'm not feeling great about my chances. I'm like second, third in them, and have kind of been stuck there for a long time. So I'm really a lot's riding on the podcast championships, and I need a good showing in those to feel good about my season overall. I did secure that 3rd overall pick in the Scott White Dynasty first-year player draft next year. The minor league draft is actually what we call it. So I will get one of those 3 prospects that we've been talking about for, 2 weeks now, right? Me having to win that one. So that kind of feels like a championship in its own right, because obviously you just feel like you're a little more invested in those dynasty leagues. And so even though it wasn't a championship, getting one of those big prospects, I think, feels like a major victory.
Nice. Congrats to you. I'm going for the 3-peat and Tout Wars head-to-head points league there. So going up, rematch of last year. Greg Jewett, fantastic player. So we'll see if I can bring it home.
Has anybody won 3 in a row in Tout Wars before? Like, you might.
I don't know. I think it has been done before, but I would join like just a few people.
Very rare company.
Yeah.
You do kind of play in the weird format. It's a head-to-head points format, and I think the winner gets to choose like what site version, what platform's version of head-to-head points scoring they use, right? And so you keep winning, so you keep choosing CBS.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see if we can take it home. Let's get into the rest of this weekend's action.
Oh my goodness gracious!
All right, Scott. Mention the name up at the top. Who is Sawyer Gipson-Long?
Well, Sawyer Gipson-Long is a pitcher for the Tigers who was called up recently. He made his 2nd start, I believe it was, over the weekend. And it was really good at the Angels, minus Mike Trout, minus Shohei Ohtani. Angels are a really good matchup right now. It needs to be pointed out. But nonetheless, Sawyer Gipson-Long allowed just 1 run in 5 innings, 2 hits, struck out 11 in those 5 innings, had 23 swinging strikes on just 82 pitches, which is an incredible swinging strike rate. And looked really good, obviously. He's a kind of difficult to size up. He wasn't a particularly highly rated prospect in the minors. As recently as the mid-season update for Baseball America, they were projecting him to be a reliever long-term. He wasn't particularly high for the Tigers in MLB Pipeline, but he did have interesting numbers in the minors. So 4.33 ERA, 1.13 WHIP in the minors. Okay, that's not so great, especially that ERA. 11.4 K per 9, and only 2.6 BB per 9. So he had a great strikeout to walk ratio. The ERA was high mainly because he gave up a ton of home runs, 1.8 home runs per 9. So just that alone kind of puts Sawyer Gipson-Long in sort of that Joe Ryan, Andrew Abbott category, where he seems to have a lot of strikeout potential, but also extremely vulnerable to home runs. And so it might be, there might be some extreme highs and lows from this guy. Obviously, Saturday being an extreme high. He sort of like those two, he doesn't throw especially hard. I mean, he's kind of in between Joe Ryan and Andrew Abbott in terms of velocity, low 90s for the fastball. And it's really the secondary stuff that sets Sawyer Gipson-Long apart. So of those 23 whiffs on Saturday, 9 came on the slider, 10 came on the changeup. Both of those pitches he threw more than either version of the fastball. He has a 2-seamer and a 4-seamer. So he really leans on that secondary arsenal, and we've seen pitchers find success that way. So I would be pretty excited about Sawyer Gipson-Long at this point in a long-term keeper league. But I do think it's worth pointing out it's not that classic power pitcher profile. Even though he did get the strikeouts, he did get a ton of whiffs in this one, and maybe he can continue to do that. It's an unconventional profile, and so that makes it harder to predict how exactly things are going to proceed moving forward. As for the rest of this year, Sawyer Gipson-Long's next start lines up for Oakland next week. So Another very favorable matchup, and I think it's favorable the final week too. Do you have that one?
Yeah, Kansas City.
So 2 great matchups to close out the season. Neither of them is going to be a 2-start week for Sawyer Gipson-Long. But if you're in one of those deeper leagues, like a 15-teamer, certainly an AL only, I was throwing my remaining fab dollars at him in that one, then I think Sawyer Gipson-Long is somebody you could really think about starting right away, much less picking up.
Yeah, absolutely. Those secondaries, the slider and the changeup look great. Everything that you mentioned there, the matchups, only 7% rostered for Sawyer Gipson-Long and at the Oakland A's this upcoming week. So I do like that quite a bit if you do play in a deeper league. Let's just run through some of the other waiver wire pitchers that stood out from this weekend. I don't know. Maybe Gipson-Long is at the top of this list. The first group includes Gavin Williams, who now has back-to-back quality starts. He was facing the Rangers this weekend, 6 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts with 13 swinging strikes for him. His fastball velocity down 1.5 miles per hour, but his slider was up 1 mile per hour. So kind of interesting there for Gavin Williams. Jose Quintana, another quality start up against the Reds, 6 2/3 innings, 2 runs allowed, 2 strikeouts. Ranger Suarez, back-to-back quality starts for him, 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts at the Cardinals. And Bailey Ober, successful return to the Twins rotation. He was at the White Sox, 5 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts to 0 walks for him. I'll give you the matchups here as well. Ober is at the Reds this week. Ranger Suarez is home against the Mets. Jose Quintana is at the Phillies. And Gavin Williams is home against the Orioles. So let's rank this group first, Scott, and then if we would take Gipson-Long over any of them.
Okay, I think I need to reload the notes page. Could you run those off one more time, the names?
Yeah, Gavin Williams, you need the matchups too?
No.
Gavin Williams, Jose Quintana, Ranger Suarez, and Bailey Ober.
Okay, I will say, who was the third name? I'm sorry. I'm trying to pull the notes open here.
Ranger Suarez.
Okay, so I'm going to say, gosh. So I know Suarez has 2 good matches. Not only does he face the Mets next week, but then he has a good matchup the following week as well. So he might be my first choice here, slightly over Gavin Williams, and then Jose Quintana, and then Bailey Ober, who I'm not really ready to trust. He looked decent in his return, but he's well over his career high in innings, and obviously just came back from, the Twins removed him from his rotation previously because he was showing signs of wearing down. So I think I'd be pretty scared to use Ober.
Yeah, so Ranger Suarez, I mentioned he is home against the Mets this week and then home against the Pirates in the final week of the season. So 2 good matchups coming up there. The only thing with Bailey Ober, at the Reds this week, he's a fly ball pitcher. I don't know if I love that, but he lines up to face the Oakland A's at home the final week of the season. So that's pretty interesting for Bailey Ober.
I mean, if he looks great against the Reds, then maybe we'll be talking about him as a sleeper for the final week. But I'd rather have these other 3 over him.
Would you take Gipson-Long ahead of that entire group?
That's a really tough question because it is just one start from a pitcher who wasn't highly regarded coming up from the minors and had an ERA over 4 there. But the matchup is, you can't ask for a better matchup than that. I think I'd lean Nona. I think I'd put Ranger Suarez and Gavin Williams over him.
All right. I was gonna say I think I would do it, but maybe I might just be getting a little bit too antsy with him. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, how much do you lean matchups versus the pitcher himself, and I don't know. It's just, I understand this time of year you kind of throw the playbook out the window and just go with what you think is going to score you the most points this week, no matter what it costs you. And so I could see doing that. He does. I don't know. It's a tough one, but I think I would lean Ranger Suarez and Gavin Williams over Sawyer Gipson-Long, and because you'll feel pretty dumb if he goes and then implodes next time out.
Right.
And it's I put a lot of faith in this guy who, hadn't done enough to earn it. 2
other names here in, I don't know, maybe deeper leagues. Probably not. They're probably in the same category. Nick Pivetta turned in his first quality start since July 31st. He was at the Blue Jays this weekend. 6 1/3 innings, 2 runs allowed, 6 strikeouts for him. And he's 57% rostered home against the White Sox this week, which is a great matchup as well. And then Brendan Pfaadt had one of his better starts since returning. 5 1/3 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts up against the Cubs. He is at the Yankees this week, and it's probably a scary place for a fly ball, home run prone pitcher to be pitching. But any interest there, Scott? Nick Pivetta against the White Sox, Brendan Pfaadt against the Yankees.
No, I mean, I could understand if it's I need to catch up in strikeouts situation. You're hoping to get a double-digit outing from Nick Pivetta. He's probably more capable of that than most pitchers you'd find on the waiver wire. But, I'd prioritize him behind Sawyer Gipson-Long if those are your terms. And then as far as Brandon Pfaadt, I really don't have enough reason to believe he's good at this point. I mean, he has had a handful of pretty good starts, but they're not like that start Sawyer Gipson-Long had. They don't really point to a ton of upside, and so I think I'm just not won over by the good starts that Brandon Pfaadt has had.
Brendan Pfaadt in 10 starts since returning to the Diamondbacks, 4.18 ERA and a 123 whip, 8.5 K per 9, 2.4 walks per 9, 11 home runs allowed. That's 1.6 home runs per 9. That's still pretty high. So he's showed signs of getting better, but I don't think we're going to trust Brandon Pfaadt over the final 2 weeks here. Player of the night, player of the weekend for me is, let's just go all Tigers, baby. Tigers starting pitchers. Tarik Skubal now has 7+ strikeouts in 6 straight starts. Also had the pleasure of facing the Angels lineup without Trout and Ohtani. 7 innings, 1 run allowed, 9 strikeouts to 0 walks, 18 swinging strikes on 91 pitches, 11 coming on that changeup, which has looked like, I don't know, maybe one of the best pitches in baseball. It is a lights out changeup here for Tarik Skubal. He's gone 6+ innings in 5 of his last 6 starts. He's down to a 3.25 ERA on the season, a .97 whip, 10.9 K per 9, 1.7 walks per 9. He gets ground balls. He's limiting hard contact, getting swinging strikes. The guy just does everything. And I know we've talked a lot about him recently, Scott, but I'm starting to worry that the hype might get a little bit too out of control for next year, because someone this weekend on Twitter asked us if Tarik Skubal should be ranked as a top 24 starting pitcher next year. And I hope not, because I kind of want to get him in the middle rounds. And I don't know, maybe your people will sleep on him a little bit. I doubt that will happen because there's a lot of very smart people out there. But I don't know. Do you have like a early thought on where Tarik Skubal could wind up in the rankings?
My early thought is yes. Yes, I think
he's so good.
Be in my top 24. I mean, he's K per 9, 10.9, BB per 9, 1.7. Home runs per 9, 0.5. And that's backed up by the high ground ball rate that you mentioned. His swinging strike rate is over 14%. He does everything right. His FIP, understandably, given that strikeout rate, walk rate, and home run rate, is 228. And like, the one thing you might have been able to ding Tarik Skubal for was just, okay, is the workload going to be there? He's a young guy. He missed, the first half of this year with injury. Those carried over from the previous year. But that hasn't been an issue in recent starts for Tarik Skubal either. And I've already told you personally, I'm going to put less emphasis on that next year than I have in recent years, and just really emphasize skills when I'm making out my pitching rankings. And so if I'm going to follow through with that, Tarik Skubal seems like exactly the guy who I need to be moving up my rankings. So I don't know for sure what everyone else is going to do, if he's going to be drafted among the top 24, but I feel pretty confident saying I will personally have Tarik Skubal among my top 24.
That changeup for Tarik Skubal, by the way, has a 186 batting average against and a 52% whiff rate this season. He gets whiffs on his fastball. He throws hard. He has breaking pitches that I think are adequate. Neither seems to be like amazing, but I don't know that they need to be with that fastball and changeup combination there for Tarik Skubal. Lots to like for next season. We've got some big news coming up. We'll take a break here. We'll talk about Ohtani. Ronald Acuña has missed 2 straight games with calf tightness. I want to give a shout out the teams that have already clinched the playoffs here. We know the Braves did it last week. The Dodgers clinched the NL West this weekend. The Orioles and Rays also clinched playoff berths. Nice to see the Orioles here back in the playoffs after a little bit of a drought. The kids are coming through. They're playing well. So it should be a very fun postseason here in Major League Baseball. Let's take our first break. When we return, we will talk about those injuries here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
Well, you need your sports news anywhere?
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Welcome back in, and unfortunately, let's talk about some injuries. We already knew that Ohtani was dealing with that oblique. He had missed, 10 or 11 games straight heading into the weekend, and no surprise, but he has been shut down for the remainder of the season, placed on the IL with that oblique strain. He ends the season with a .304 batting average, 44 homers, 20 steals, and a career-best 1066 OPS. Ohtani as a pitcher, 3.14 ERA, 106 WHIP, 167 strikeouts, over 132 innings. Obviously, the guy's amazing. He will win the American League MVP. My guess is we've probably seen the last of Ohtani in an Angels uniform, Scott. And speaking of the Angels, their GM, Perry Manassian, told reporters that Ohtani will have a procedure on that torn UCL in his right elbow soon, though they didn't mention exactly if it's going to be Tommy John or an internal brace. I think a brace is more for hitters. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe Rich Hill had that done, but
I think so. I think Hill had it done. Yeah.
They haven't specified yet, but we know Ohtani's going to have some kind of surgery here. Any, closing thoughts on his season? Do you still think he gets this $500 million contract this offseason? Any early thoughts for 2024?
I think it's in doubt now because of the question about his elbow and how it will impact his pitching future. It seemed likely before that because there really was nobody to compare Ohtani to. So why wouldn't he get a contract that nobody could compete with? I don't know. I mean, we got to wait to see exactly what procedure it is. I'm presuming it's going to be Tommy John surgery. And if it is Tommy John surgery, I presume that'll keep Ohtani out as a hitter for the start of next season. Certainly it'll keep him out as a pitcher for all of next season. So it's going to be a different player that we're drafting next year than the one we drafted this year. And, even if he has the Tommy John surgery and he comes back as quickly from it as Bryce Harper did, which was the quickest we've seen before. He had it around Thanksgiving, was back in early May. So that's 6 months, basically a little more than 6 months. So even if Ohtani races back for opening day, which would be about the same timetable as that, it took really till the second half of the season before Harper was hitting for the kind of power we're used to seeing him hit for. And so I don't know that would necessarily be the greatest thing for Ohtani's fantasy value if he did come back for opening day. I don't think he deserves to be drafted in the first round, factoring all of that in. I know in the early mock draft results we've seen, he has gone there, but I do think that'll change over time. And if it doesn't, then I'm just not going to be in for it, and that's fine. But I do think overall he's going to be a good hitter in fantasy next year for however much he's available, presumably, at least 2/3 of the season. So he will need to be drafted in the early rounds, but first round seems high for me given all the other factors there.
Yeah, that mock draft we've referenced a few times. 15-team, 5x5 standard roto. We did the first 6 rounds, and we, meaning me and 14 other Tout Wars participants, and Shohei Ohtani went pick 14 in a 15-team league. So, first round pick in that league, but I guess if you're in a 12-teamer, maybe he's like an early second. I think he's probably going to get pushed down too. We got to wait to see when he has surgery, what kind of surgery he has. But I do agree. I think he'll get pushed down at least a little bit from that early draft ranking. Other big news from the weekend, Ronald Acuña has missed 2 straight games with right calf tightness. And the latest here, I was trying to find some quotes. I couldn't find anything too concrete. Brian Snitker was asked if the team clinching will impact whether Acuña plays, I guess, through this injury. But he said, quote, probably not. Honestly, that's a touchy spot if it doesn't heal quick. So err on the side of caution, especially on this surface. So the Braves were playing in Marlins Park where they have turf. So I think they were just being really safe with Ronald Acuña. Scott, have you heard anything else? What's the latest? And for people still playing, do you keep Acuña in your lineups this week?
I mean, the fact that the Braves have clinched is a complicating factor. They're still playing for the number 1 seed in the NL, and given that they were just swept, and the Dodgers, I think, swept their series, right? So that gap is closing between them and the Dodgers for the number 1 seed. So there is still something to play for. It's a bye either way, a first round bye either way. So I don't know how much they're going to prioritize it. It might keep him out long. I mean, what Snicker said about the calf being a tricky area, or however he put it. Yeah, I mean, if that gets hurt, it's really difficult to rehabilitate, and it's probably it could knock him out for all the playoffs. So I don't know that they want to rush him back for just to secure number 1 seed over number 2 seed, which, by the way, they may do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what ultimately you're asking whether you start him or not in fantasy. I lean yes. I think he'll play the majority of the week since they are saying it's not that serious, and since he did specify the playing surface in Miami. I think given the upside from Acuña, half a week of production from him is going to be better than a full week production from any outfielder you pick up off the waiver wire. But it is, I can't predict the future, and he may end up sitting out the whole week. That is a real possibility.
The Braves play at 7:20 p.m. Eastern time here on Monday. So we should have an update a couple of hours before the game on whether or not Acuña will be in there. But even if he's not, I think I'm with you. I think I'd probably risk it just based on how ridiculous he's been when he's been on the field this season. And just a reminder that there is an early game here on Monday as well, 2:10 p.m. Eastern time between the Guardians and the Royals. So if you have any players on those teams, make sure to set your lineups. Speaking of the Braves, by the way, Scott, shout out to Matt Olson setting the team's single season home run record. 52.
Yeah, I was there for it.
Nice. 52 home runs and counting. We'll see where that winds up.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Good for him.
All right, let's talk about a few waiver wire hitters here. And 2 names up top here. I've got 2 outfielders. James Outman hit 2 home runs this weekend. He's having a strong second half. I feel like he's a name we haven't talked too much about. Batting .260 with 10 home runs, 6 steals, and an .861 OPS, 18% walk rate in the second half, 29% strikeout rate. 73% rostered for Outman. He's got 7 games this week, 3 lefties on the schedule, but looks like he's been playing against both-handedness recently for the Dodgers. And Mark Canha, he's a name I brought up last week. He's been playing really well. He had a big weekend, huge game on Saturday, 3 for 5 with his 11th home run, 5 RBI in that game. And then on Sunday, he went 2 for 4 with 2 steals, 39 games with the Brewers. Mark Canha is batting .319 with 5 homers, 26 RBI, and 3 steals. And I know the Brewers have the second best hitter matchups this week, Scott. So I don't know if we're just, obviously we got to go on a week by week basis at this point. James Outman, Mark Canha, what do you think?
Yeah, I love Canha for this week. I added him to the sleeper hitters. At the time, I wanted to put him in originally, but he was dealing with a wrist issue, and I didn't know how that was going to play out. He returned this weekend, had 2 huge games back-to-back, continuing a very big September for Mark Canha. So I actually bumped his teammate, Sal Frelick, because if you remember Friday's show, I said Sal Frelick's been playing against both lefties and righties recently, so doesn't matter that there's 3 on the schedule for the Brewers. Well, somebody on Twitter pointed out that was only true with Christian Yelich out. And so Yelich returned over the weekend. He sat again Sunday, right? So he's been in and out of the lineup himself. But I noticed that that Sal Frelick did sit against the lefty the Brewers faced this weekend. Canha's been playing every day, and I think he's better suited to take advantage of those favorable matchups. So I think he's a good play this week.
All right, 2 first basemen / corner infielders. Jake Berger had a huge weekend as well. 7 hits, 2 homers, 5 runs, 6 RBI in 42 games with the Marlins. He is batting .306 with 8 home runs, 24 runs, 23 RBI, and just a 22% strikeout rate. So looks like a conscious effort there from Jake Berger to make more contact here. He's played well with the Marlins. And Carlos Santana, who went 2 for 3 with a double dong on Friday night. And as I just mentioned, the Brewers have great hitter matchups this week. Santana hasn't been great with the Brewers. He's batting .236. He's got 9 home runs in the 41 games with the team. But if you're debating between these two, Scott, Jake Berger or Carlos Santana, which way would you go?
For this next week, I guess
I think it's a little tough because the Brewers have the better matchups, but I think Berger is the better player.
Yeah, Berger's the better player. I mean, it might be a points league versus roto league thing because points league's always been Carlos Santana's better format. That remains true now. Berger strikes. Well, you mentioned he's striking out less, but he's not a good plate discipline guy the way Carlos Santana is. They obviously play different positions too. Berger, you could slot at second, third base, so that might factor into your decision making as well. I believe the Marlins have great matchups for the final week of the season, if I'm remembering correctly. So that, you know, if you're thinking more than just this week, that might tip the scales in Berger's favor. Mets Pirates are who the Marlins are facing. Final week of the season, that's pretty good. That home run he hit on Saturday was like a low line drive. It ended up being the game-winning home run. It was like a low line drive to straightaway center, and it's like off the bat, that's not going to leave, and it did. It got over the fence. It was at 113 miles per hour. Ooh. I was like, that's so Berger. Hit it like that trajectory to straightaway center should not result in a home run unless you hit at 113 miles per hour. So striking out less has not compromised his power, let's just say.
I love that. We should make that a new phrase here. Kind of like That's So Raven, the Disney Channel back in the day. That's so Berger.
That's so. My kids loved his name. By the way, they may have left with Jake Berger as their favorite player.
Nice, as they should. I mean,
it's traitorous. I don't know that they should.
What if your kids wanted to be Marlins fans, Scott? Would you allow them to be?
No. No, as much as like I am like trying to push the baseball on them as opposed to it coming to them naturally. I mean, I think they tell you their favorite sport is baseball, but I'm through my own propaganda making that happen. So it would be weird if they ended up choosing a different team than their dad's, but no, I wouldn't disown them if that happened.
No, I know you wouldn't disown them, but it's just it's funny. Yeah, I don't have that problem yet. But the biggest thing I have is I have a cat, so I don't think she really cares too much about baseball. Not yet, at least. Two potential middle infielders here. DJ LeMahieu has been hitting well for the Yankees. Last 23 games for him, he's batting .264 with 7 homers, 14 runs, 14 RBI. He's 49% rostered. He has that triple eligibility, first, second, third. 6 games this upcoming week. And Edouard Julien, he's powering back up. 1 for 4 with his 14th home run. He's got 3 homers over his last 6 games. And he is 40% rostered. 6 games this week as well. The problem, 3 lefties on the schedule, Scott. So I'm kind of scared off Edouard Julien.
Yeah, no. I mean, it was a great start this week. It worked out because there were no lefties on the schedule for the Twins, but with a bunch of lefties on really the next 2 weeks. The Twins might have the best hitter matchups of any team. If we're combining the 2 weeks together, who has the best matchups is probably the Twins, but there's a bunch of lefties. So I'm not really sure you're going to get much use out of Edouard Julien the rest of the way. Now, if Jorge Polanco's out there, you might want to make a play for him. But
do you have any
like 73% rostered?
Any enthusiasm for DJ LeMahieu?
No.
Okay. Last name on the list here, Luis Campusano. Just wanted to mention as a sneaky ad in 2-catcher leagues. He's been playing a lot more since Gary Sanchez suffered, I think, a fractured wrist, so he's out for the year. But Campusano has played well. 44 games this season, .297 batting average, 6 homers, .797 OPS. The Padres have the second best hitter matchups this week. He's 12% rostered. So if you play in a 2-catcher league, I think Luis Campusano makes for a sneaky pickup this week.
You know, Henry Davis was activated this weekend in a league where I added Campusano as my second catcher. I think I'm just going to stick with Campusano, though. Davis looked great on his rehab assignment, but he struck out 3 times each game he played over the weekend. So I don't know. Still trying to figure out how to hit in the majors, it seems like.
Yep. All right, let's get into some other news and notes from the weekend. So you're saying there's a chance Felix Bautista threw a bullpen Sunday in Baltimore, his first mound work since he was diagnosed with a partial tear of the UCL. And I think as long as he keeps throwing these bullpens, and, you know, we'll find out more tomorrow, how his body responds, how his arm responds. But there might be a chance, Scott, that Felix Bautista actually returns for a postseason run here.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like a pretty good chance, given how far along the fact he's throwing, the fact they haven't ruled it out, obviously. And I'd be a little nervous about starting Yennier Cano in fantasy, given that Felix Bautista is lurking out there. A little nervous. Obviously, in some leagues, he's going to be your best choice. But if you're in a league where like Tanner Scott is still out there, and that's true in almost half of CBS leagues, then I think I'd opt for him over Cano. I mean, Cano hasn't done that much in the role anyway.
Mm-hmm. Next up, Mike Trout has been holding a bat and taking dry swings without much soreness for about a week. He went back on the IL August 22nd with soreness in his left hand/wrist. And if you remember earlier this season, Trout suffered a hamate bone fracture. So he's currently trying to rehab and get back this season. I don't know that it makes sense. Maybe he just wants to play a couple of games to finish out the year, because all these kind of trade rumors are swirling now, Scott, that the Angels might just blow this thing up. If Ohtani leaves, now they're talking about potentially shipping out Mike Trout. I don't know.
I hadn't heard about that, but it would make sense. I mean, they don't have enough to go with him. And I know it's popular in baseball analytical circles to just, I don't know, it's weird. Like 10 years ago, it was like, you never buy a championship. And now it's like, you should just buy a championship. But I don't think it's really that easy. I think
the Padres showed us that this year.
Yeah. So I'm still more in the former camp. I guess I came up in the Moneyball era and just kind of like the idea of efficiency. But you know, they don't have enough to go with Trout is the bottom line. So if I were running the Angels and, you know, didn't have to listen to whatever the owner wanted, maybe this is what the owner wants, who knows? then yeah, I would probably be shopping Mike Trout.
I don't even know what the return would look like either, because Trout.
It's probably too late. I mean, I kind of felt that way before they locked him into that deal. And it was an unpopular thing to say out loud. And of course, the Red Sox didn't get enough for Mookie Betts. And if that's all the return was for Trout, okay, maybe you don't trade him. But yeah, now he's kind of become an injury risk, and he has that huge contract attached to him. So they may not even get enough of a return to make it viable. Yeah. But I can understand the sentiment, I guess, is all I'm saying.
Trout is signed through 2030, which will be his age 38 season. And he makes $35 million every year from now through 2030. So, I mean, it's a tradable contract. I just don't know how much the Angels would get in return. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Joe Musgrove will officially not pitch again this season for the Padres. He was placed in the IL with inflammation in his right shoulder capsule on August 4th. Christian Yelich, as we mentioned earlier, returned to the Brewers lineup on Friday, and then he was out again Saturday and Sunday as he deals with back stiffness. What do we do with Yelich, Scott? I don't know. It feels like this is going to continue to linger. Maybe we'll find out Monday if he's in the lineup, but let's say he's out of the lineup Monday. What would you do with Yelich?
Probably sit him.
Okay. They have a game at...
if his back's giving him trouble, how productive is he going to be anyway?
Right. And he's kind of slowed down over the past month or so, too. So the Brewers play at 7:45 p.m. Eastern time. So, again, should know a little bit before that. Josh Young will rejoin the Rangers on Monday after an encouraging weekend of rehab. He had surgery on August 9th to repair a fracture in his left thumb. They said he's going to rejoin the team. They didn't say they're going to activate him just yet, but let's say Josh Young is activated, Scott. Are you throwing him right back into your lineups coming off this thumb fracture?
Probably not. Now, it depends how deep your league is, who you've had to suffer through at third base at present, but probably not. He didn't have a true minor league rehab assignment, Josh Young. And, I think it's putting too much on him to get him active right away in most fantasy leagues. Can we talk about Ryan Pepiot for a second? Because that seems like all the commenters want to hear about. And obviously he didn't pitch over the weekend. So he's scheduled to go Tuesday. I think he's going to be a 2-star pitcher this week, but of course that's always, we don't know till it happens, especially this time of year, especially on a Dodgers team that's now clinched its division title. If you look at some of the probable pitcher sites, they don't show Pepiot going twice this week. Maybe they'll be right, but I noticed they do have like both Emmett Sheehan and Gavin Stone taking a turn. Well, Gavin Stone just had a 3 1/3 inning relief appearance on Sunday. Emmett Sheehan piggybacked with Clayton Kershaw, I believe, on Saturday. So neither of them made a start this week. I don't know why we're projecting them both to make starts next week. I think it's just a 5-man rotation. I think it could change any day. But my presumption is still that Pepiot is going to start twice this week. And even if he only goes once, it'll be against the Tigers. So
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So, yeah, I think you should feel comfortable getting Ryan Pepiot in your lineups. Ha-Sung Kim was scratched Sunday due to abdominal discomfort. He'll undergo tests to determine whether it's internal or muscular. Edward Cabrera is expected to start Monday after serving as a bulk reliever in his previous 2 outings. I assume you still like Edward Cabrera, Scott?
I do. I mean, within reason. I wouldn't say I'd start him in all contexts. If you're mostly looking to preserve ERA and WHIP in a roto league, maybe not. If you're looking to make up ground in strikeouts, absolutely. In a points league, probably yes, because you can, points league scoring serves to mitigate the damage of a bad stat line better than roto does.
Would you go with Ryan Pepiot or Edward Cabrera?
Well, they're my numbers 1 and 2 sleeper pitchers for this week. Pepiot's 1, Cabrera 2.
There you go. Brian De La Cruz has missed 2 straight with an ankle injury. Jorge Soler was reinstated and in the Marlins lineup on Sunday. His first game back, 2 for 3 with his 36th home run of the year. Kenley Jansen is expected to be activated from the COVID IL on Wednesday. John Schreiber came in for a 1-run save on Saturday for the Red Sox, and he blew it. So get back soon, Kenley Jansen. Salvador Perez was out of the lineup Sunday with a head injury. He's been cleared of a concussion, but remains day-to-day. Ryan Mountcastle has missed 4 straight with a left shoulder injury. Heston Kjerstad has only started 1 game, like we suspected might be the case. He did hit a home run in that 1 start against Zach Eflin, so that was pretty cool. Adbert Alzolay played catch on Saturday. He went on the IL last Monday with a right forearm strain. Michael Lorenzen and Christopher Sanchez will indeed be used in a piggyback role Tuesday against the Braves. Now, hearing that for certain, Scott, are you still okay using Christopher Sanchez, or have you taken him out of your sleeper pitchers for this week?
No, I've kept him in. We don't know exactly who's going to get what share of that start. You want Sanchez to go the minimum 5 for a win, obviously. Braves makes it tricky, but then his second start would be against the Mets. So, I think specifically in a points league, I'd still lean toward it, especially if you can put him in that RP spot. It's better than a borderline closer, I would say. But that's why he's not higher on the sleeper pitcher list.
Fair enough. Kyle Harrison was sent back to AAA. Ross Stripling was reinstated from the IL. Harrison could be dropped in all redraft leagues. Marcus Stroman was activated Friday and then pitched in relief both Friday and Saturday. It appears that he'll remain in the bullpen until he gets built back up, if that could even happen by hopefully the time they get to the postseason. Reed Detmers was scratched Sunday with an illness. Hope you were not planning on streaming him. I feel like maybe we kind of spoke this into existence, Scott, unfortunately.
Yeah. We were debating between Griffin Canning, Reed Detmers, who was the better stream. And I think we like Detmers more just on ability, but then, he's going Sunday, so there's a chance he could get bumped, and he got bumped. So hopefully you went with Canning instead.
Brett Beatty has missed 3 straight with a mild groin injury. Joey Weimer was optioned to AAA on Sunday. Graham Ashcraft will undergo season-ending surgery on his right big toe this Tuesday. D-backs pitcher Dre Jameson needs Tommy John surgery, which means he'll miss all of next season as well. And all of these players went on the IL this weekend. Tristan Casas with right shoulder inflammation. Tyler O'Neill with a sprained right foot. Juan Yepez was recalled. Kyle Freeland with an oblique strain. Mickey Moniak with left back tightness. Mike Moustakas with a left forearm strain. And Matt Carpenter with right elbow inflammation. Let's take our final break. When we return, the leftovers from the weekend starter sit questions. We'll do that right after this.
Get your team ready to move.
I'm ready. Welcome, enjoy the show.
Vamos.
Celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month
I don't mind that.
with stories of heroes,
Everything's gonna be just fine.
home,
I love it here. This town, the people.
and honor.
You need to remember what you're fighting for.
Celebrate today and every day.
All cheers to that. Salud.
Explore the One Mountain Una Familia collection on Paramount Plus. Stream now.
Welcome back in. Let's go rapid fire. I've got some pitching leftovers here. Should we start or sit these fringe starting pitchers this week? Brian Bayo set a new career high with 10 strikeouts at the Blue Jays this weekend. 6 innings, 3 runs, 10 strikeouts with 16 swinging strikes. The problem, he's at the Texas Rangers this week. Scott, what do you think about Brian Bayo?
It's not an absolute sit, but I lean sit. And I'll probably phrase most of these responses similarly.
Yeah, and as always, we're framing this for 12-team leagues. It's kind of hard just to put a blanket starter sit on it, but basically we're going to let you know how we're feeling about these pitchers and their matchups this week. Lucas Giolito had his first scoreless start in nearly 2 months. He was up against the Rangers, 7 shutout innings, 12 strikeouts, 16 swinging strikes. Normally, I would say there's no way. He's at the Royals this week. Scott?
Why would you say there's no way? He just had a 12 strikeout game, and his start before then was good too. And you know what those starts had in common? He threw his changeup about 50% of the time, his best pitch. I think that's close to twice as often as what of his usage before, twice as much usage on that changeup. So he's made an adjustment here, has Lucas Giolito, that has led to some pretty good results. The matchup's incredible. I like it. I think Giolito's a start.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good note on the changeup usage, but his previous 10 starts before this one, Scott, an 8.06 ERA and a 160 whip.
Well, but yes, but that was before the. If you just look at the two where the changeup usage was up, so he had the 12 strikeout effort to Giolito, and then prior to that he had 9 strikeouts in 7 innings. Did allow 4 runs, but he allowed 4 base runners too. You know, I call that a good start. So I think it was 2 good starts with that changeup usage.
All right. Another clunker from Aaron Nola at the Cardinals. 4 2/3 innings, 7 hits, 3 runs allowed, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, 10 hard hits in this game. Now in the second half, Nola has a 5.08 ERA and a 131 whip. There's, look, maybe he goes out and has a classic Aaron Nola start. I cannot start him at the Atlanta Braves this week.
Neither can I. And the prophecy is being fulfilled, I will point out. He's going to be drafted after Tarik Skubal next year.
That might be true. And it might be warranted based on...
Yeah. And that's what I was hoping for.
Right.
Because I hope to draft him for cheap.
All right. Chris Bassett had a great start up against the Red Sox. 7 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts there. And he's gone 7+ innings in 3 of his last 4 starts. He is at Tampa Bay this week. They are 4th in WOBA against right-handed pitching. Chris Bassett.
You know, in an ideal world, you'll have somebody better. But if you don't, it's okay to start him.
Okay. What about Chris Sale, who had his best start since returning from the IL? He was at the Blue Jays, 6 innings, 1 run, 10 strikeouts with 14 swinging strikes. Velocity was way down once again. His fastball was down 2.6 miles per hour in this start. And he is at home against the White Sox. So it's a pretty good matchup.
It is a good matchup. He's had no trouble getting strikeouts despite the velocity being down. And obviously this 10 strikeout effort backs that up. But otherwise, the results have been iffy. I lean yes on Sale. I'd rather start Sale against the White Sox than Sawyer Gipson. What's his third name?
Long.
Yeah, Sawyer Gipson-Long against the whoever he's facing. The good matchup he had.
Yeah. I think it's at the Oakland A's this week.
Oakland, yeah.
What a great name too, by the way. Sawyer Gipson-Long. It's
just I'll remember that third name is Long because the entire name is long.
There you go. Andrew Abbott, another rough outing at the Mets this weekend. 3 2/3 innings, 2 runs allowed, 5 strikeouts. His last 9 starts now, he has a 6.37 ERA and a 173 whip. This is another one where I think I would just say, okay, this is an easy bench. He's at home against the Pirates this week. What do you think about Andrew Abbott?
I'd rather not. Like if it's a daily league, particularly if it's a daily points league, then I'm not going to say don't start him when his turn comes out. But if you're setting a lineup for the week, no, he's just been too unreliable, has Andrew Abbott.
All right, Clayton Kershaw, he continues to be limited. This time he was at the Mariners, 4 shutout innings, 4 strikeouts, only threw 56 pitches in this. His velocity remains way down. His fastball was down over 2 miles per hour. The slider was down over 3 miles per hour in this start. Clayton Kershaw, who could be limited once again, is home against the Giants this week.
Nope. Don't trust him to go even 5 innings.
Okay. Carlos Rodon struck out a season-high 10 at the Pirates on Sunday, yet he still has a 5.90 ERA and a 136 whip. He is at home against the D-backs this week, 21st in WOBA against lefties. So it's a pretty solid matchup.
I could go either way with that. Yeah, I don't mind it. Rodon has looked better his last 2 starts. The strikeouts are coming back, and it's a pretty good matchup. I lean yes, but a lower priority than Sale, I would say.
Okay. Charlie Morton's control is wavering once again. He has 4+ walks in back-to-back starts. He was at the Marlins this weekend, 4 2/3 innings, 6 runs allowed, 5 walks in this outing. Lots of hard contact as well. It's a good matchup, though, at the Nationals this week. What do you think about Charlie Morton?
I think I'll pass in most cases.
Okay. Jesus Luzardo, who has kind of encompassed this season pitching in a nutshell. He's had some blow-up starts. He's had some amazing starts. And then what did he do on Sunday? Another amazing start up against the Braves. Obviously, no Acuña in the lineup. but 6 shutout innings with 8 strikeouts and 17 swinging strikes for Jesus Luzardo. He is home against the Brewers this week. He just faced them last week, and he gave up 6 earned runs against them. So
He'll get him this time as a start.
all right, Scott is in on Luzardo against the Brewers this week. 2 pitchers who are human after all, Scott. Tyler Glasnow has struggled in his last 2 starts. This one, he was at the Orioles, 6 runs allowed over 4 innings. He has now allowed 10 runs total over his last 2 starts. And your boy, I can't claim him. This is your guy, Cole Reagans. He is human against the Astros. They are great against lefties. We know that. 6 innings, 5 runs allowed, still had 7 strikeouts, still had 18 swinging strikes. The problem, he's at the Astros again this week, so it's pretty
He'll
scary.
get him this time. No, I mean, from a run scored perspective, this was his worst start, right? 5, which, if
Sounds right.
in this pitching environment, it's hard to knock anybody for a 5-run start every once in a while. I was relieved, frankly, because remember his previous start, he had the last batter he faced, he fell down on the mound twice, threw 3 straight pitches to the backstop. What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, he's okay. He was okay. He had, for the most part, a typical Reagan's performance. I know they left him in for this. They let him come out for the 7th, and he put 2 runners on, and so they removed him. So two of the 5 runs he gave up were inherited, where the reliever let the inherited runner score. So that puts it, paints it in a slightly different light. But yeah, I mean, he was missing lots of bats. His stuff is amazing. I'd start him against the Astros, 2nd straight turn.
Alrighty. Other pitching standouts from the weekend. Part 1, Zach Eflin had a great start at the Orioles. 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 8 strikeouts to 0 walks. Jose Barrios had one of his best starts of the season against the Red Sox. 7 shutout innings, 5 hits, 0 walks, 8 strikeouts for him. Logan Webb, a great start in Coors Field. 8 innings, 1 run allowed, 6 strikeouts with 18 swinging strikes. And Tarik Skubal, who we mentioned earlier, so we're not going to talk about him again. Anything to add on Webb, Barrios, and Zach Eflin?
Nah, let's keep going.
Okay. Pitching standouts, part 2. Grayson Rodriguez set a new career high with 8 innings up against the Tampa Bay Rays. He only allowed 5 hits, 0 walks, 7 strikeouts with 11 swinging strikes in that one. Framber Valdez had a great start at the Royals. 7 innings pitched, 1 unearned run, 5 strikeouts there. Sonny Gray continues his great second half. He's gone 7 innings in 3 of his last 5 starts. The ERA is down to 2.84. He's got a 1.17 whip, 7 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts at the White Sox. And Brandon Woodruff continues to get it done since returning from the IL. He faced the Nationals, 6 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts for him. He has allowed a total of 5 earned runs over his last 5 starts. That is spanning 34 innings for Brandon Woodruff. Anything to add on him, Sonny Gray, Framber Valdez, and Grayson Rodriguez?
So for Framber Valdez, it appears the cutter's back. Remember during that rough patch, it kind of went missing for him. He was throwing it like 5% of the time. So the usage has been creeping up in recent starts as his performance has improved. And in this start, he threw it 25% of the time. He hadn't thrown his cutter that much since June, I think. It was up a few miles per hour too. So I think Framber Valdez is back on track. And thankfully, it's a good time for him to be back on track. Grayson Rodriguez, I kept saying, I've kept saying, while the cumulative numbers since returning from the minors have been good, I've been waiting for that breakthrough start. You could call this a breakthrough start. 8 shutout innings against a good offense, good Rays offense. It's still weird to me, given how good his stuff is, given how enormous his prospect profile is, that the strikeouts, like in each individual start, he doesn't even get a strikeout per inning. Like, where are all the strikeouts for this guy? And this one, he only had 11 swinging strikes in addition to 7 strikeouts in 8 innings. He threw his fastball 69% of the time, which was weird. He really leaned on that. I guess it was working for him, so why change it? I just wonder. I think it's more a question of when than if we start to see the strikeouts for Grayson Rodriguez, because like the stuff is too good for him not to be a big bat misser. But I'm surprised it hasn't shown up yet.
Grayson Rodriguez, by the way, in 11 starts since returning from the minors, 2.59 ERA and a 1.06 WHIP, only 8.3 K per nine, and that's what we're talking about. We need more strikeouts, but also we're just kind of being greedy with Grayson.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Cleveland next week, you're going to start him.
Yeah, 100%. Some hitting leftovers here. Another big weekend for Michael Harris. He had 6 hits, 2 homers, 3 runs, and 3 RBI. I'm not sure if he'll hit 2 homers in 2 weeks. He might, but if he does that, then he'll wind up with a 2020 season. So let's go, Michael Harris. Huge weekend for Luis Ariz. He went 2 for 5 with a double dong on Friday, then 3 for 5 with a sock and a shoe on Saturday, and then 3 more hits on Sunday. Still batting .353 with an .864 OPS on the year. Vlad Jr. has homered in 3 of his last 4 games. He's up to 24 homers, 90 RBI, 787 OPS. He will be a fun one to dissect this offseason. Royce Lewis went 1 for 2 with 3 walks and another grand slam. I think that either happened on Friday or Saturday. He now has 5 grand slams in his first 16 career home runs. The first player to do that in MLB history. He also has 4 grand slams in an 18-game span this season. That is the shortest span in MLB history. He's pretty awesome and pretty clutch.
It would seem that way.
Yeah. Royce Lewis. He went kind of early in that mock draft. I want to see if that's going to remain as the offseason goes on here. Bobby Witt Jr. keeps running wild. He had 3 more steals this weekend. Also had 4 hits and a home run. He's up to 29 homers and 47 steals on the year.
He's going to end up joining the 30-50 club too.
Yeah.
Seems like. And that'll make him the 4th player to do so.
I think he is a top 5 pick next year, Scott.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Fernando Tatis had a strong week. His last 6 games, he has 9 hits, 2 homers, 6 runs, 6 RBI, and a steal. Now up to 25 homers and 26 steals in 129 games. Rafael Devers hitting for power as of late. He has 4 homers in his last 7 games. Just having a pretty big second half as well. I feel like we haven't talked about Devers enough, but he's batting .313 with 13 homers and a .969 OPS here in the second half. Jazz Chisholm, as you mentioned earlier, he had 2 huge games in a row, 2 for 3 with a sock and 3 shoes. That's right, a homer and 3 steals, a grand slam, a grand sock and 3 shoes, a stocking, as we said on Friday's podcast. He did that on Saturday and then hit his 18th home run of the year on Sunday. Jordan Walker has turned it up in September as well. He's batting .302 with 4 homers and a .922 OPS. Juan Soto, huge game on Sunday. He went 3 for 5 with a double dong, 6 RBI, also having a big final month, .304 batting average, 7 homers, 4 steals, and an 11.08 OPS. Let's wrap up with some bullpen updates here. For the Marlins, Tanner Scott struck out 1 for his 9th save on Friday. Remains just 57% rostered if you're looking for a closer. For the Royals, I guess very deep league play here, AL only, 15-team leagues. Taylor Clark picked up 2 saves this weekend for Kansas City. He is 0% rostered, so literally out there in every league. For the Phillies on Friday, Jose Alvarado picked up his 8th save, and he now has 2 of the last 3 saves for the Phillies. I don't think Alvarado's actually the guy, Scott. It just feels like the Phillies play matchups a good amount.
Yeah, I know for at least one of those saves over the weekend, Kimbrel worked the 8th, setting up Alvarado for the 9th. And I think Alvarado allowed a run in the 9th, so it didn't go smoothly. But yeah, I mean, I'll be a little iffy on Kimbrel here, particularly if somebody like Tanner Scott's available.
Mm-hmm. For the Rockies on Saturday, Tyler Kinley allowed 2 hits and a walk, but picked up his 4th save. He now has 3 of the last 5 saves for the Rockies. He's 3% rostered. For the Rangers on Saturday, Will Smith was in for the 8th inning, had a 1-run lead. He gave up a double and a walk. He was later replaced by Jose Leclerc, who allowed both runs to score. The team passed on using Aroldis Chapman, who hasn't pitched since last Tuesday, I think September 12th. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. Maybe they were just saving him for the 9th.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
He's been kind of bumpy. It's been a bumpy ride since they moved him into the closer role after he was just dominating before that.
Yep, sure has. For the Tigers on Saturday, Alex Lang got the 9th inning with a 3-run lead. He gave up 3 runs on 2 homers. He took his 5th blown save. Will Vest would eventually get the save in extra innings. And then on Sunday, right back to Alex Lang, pitched a clean 9th inning for his 24th save of the year. For the Cardinals on Sunday, Ryan Helsley gave up a hit and a walk, but picked up his 11th save. He's 61% rostered. Scott, who would you rather have, Helsley or Tanner Scott?
Scott. But, for all those instances, I said, well, I would, I don't know that I'd stick with him if Tanner Scott was out there. But the same probably goes for Helsley. His last 4 appearances have resulted in a save. I'd prefer him to Kimbrel at this point.
And probably take both of those guys over Chapman too, right? That's probably easy.
Yeah, I think so. If it was June and we were saying rest of season, I think I'd go Chapman, but you have to take it a week at a time right now, and it's hard to have much faith in Chapman at the moment.
All right. And then for the Giants on Sunday, Camilo Doval started the 9th inning with a 5-run lead. The game was in Coors Field. Had some bad defense behind him too, but he gave up 4 runs. He was relieved by Taylor Rogers, who got the final out for his 2nd save of the year. To stream or not to stream, let's start with Monday. And we have Edward Cabrera against the Mets, Mike Clevenger at the Nationals, Brian Wu at the Oakland A's, Cal Quantrill at the Royals. I think all 4 of those are pretty good.
Yeah, if I'm ranking them, and again, this is just for daily lineups, not weekly lineups, I go Wu at Oakland first, and then I go Edward Cabrera against the Mets. Then I go Mike Clevenger at Washington, and I'll leave it at that. JP Sears against the Mariners would be 4th. Who else did you mention there?
Cal Quantrill at the Royals.
Nah.
Okay. On Tuesday, we have a bulk reliever, Christopher Sanchez at the Braves, Logan T. Allen at the Royals. We have Javier Assad against the Pirates. We've got Paul Blackburn against the Mariners.
Yeah, so I'll go Allen at the Royals, followed by Assad against the Pirates, followed by Blackburn against the Mariners. I did lay out a context for starting Sanchez in a points league, despite his next turn being at Atlanta, but that's more in a weekly scenario where you get the prospect of a second outing. If it's just this outing at Atlanta on its own, rather not.
All right, we're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.